ओम श्रुति स्मृति पुराणानाम आलयम करुणालयम नमामि भगवत्पाद शंकरं लोकशंकरं। त्वमेव माता च पिता त्वमेव बन्धुश्च सखा त्वमेव विद्या द्रविणं त्वमेव सर्वं मम देवदेव। श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तिसुदेशिकेन्द्रं द्वैपायनं सूत्रकृतं मुनीन्द्रं श्रीशंकरं भाष्यकृतं यतीन्द्रं मद्देशिकञ्चापि नमामि विद्यै। ओम नमो ब्रह्मादिभ्यो ब्रह्मविद्यासम्प्रदायकर्तृभ्यो वंशऋषिभ्यो महद्भ्यो नमो गुरुभ्यः। सर्वोपप्लवरहितप्रज्ञानगणः प्रत्यगर्तो ब्रह्मैवाहमस्मि। Pranams everyone. So we are in this introduction to Vedanta series. We had seen the human goals to be 4: Artha, Kama, Dharma, Moksha, and for which our Shastras have laid out both the infrastructure and the sadhanas to pursue to reach this final goal of Moksha. Moksha meaning liberation. Liberation from samsara. And this liberation has got two liberations, one in this birth itself and also liberation from the cycle of birth and death in this life itself, and then also from the cycle of birth and death. Jivan muktihi videha muktihi. And for this moksha we were given three major sadhanas for us to pursue. The three major sadhanas being Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga and Jnana Yoga. Karma Yoga is about getting Chitta Shuddhi, and Upasana Yoga is Chitta Ekagrataha. Chitta Shuddhi means pure mind. Chitta Ekagrataha means a focused mind. So we need to have a clean mind, a focused mind, and then once we pursue Jnana Yoga, which is Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam, listening, contemplating and internalization of the Shastras, then one will attain Jivan Mukti. This is what the Shastras are laid out for human beings, for every Jiva, and there is no restriction on it. This moksha is available for everyone. It is not restricted to a particular caste, section of the society, particular age group, particular gender. It is open for everyone. And once we come to this Jnana Yoga, we should have sufficient qualifications for us to be able to pursue this Jnana. These qualifications are called as Sadhana Chatushtayam, fourfold qualifications. And these fourfold qualifications, we saw them as Viveka, Vairagya, Mumukshutvam and Shatka Sampatti. Viveka meaning discrimination, the ability to discriminate between what is permanent and what is impermanent. The ability to understand what is fleeting and what is not fleeting. So, having that conviction on everything that is, having that conviction on this knowledge is Viveka. And then the next qualification we saw as Vairagya. Vairagya is the attitude that we show on impermanent things. Once we have been able to identify what is permanent and what is not permanent, the attitude that one should have on the impermanent things is called Vairagya. Dispassion. Not getting addicted to them, neither having a strong like or not having a strong dislike on those objects, those things. That is called as Vairagya. And then on the permanent thing itself, we should have a deep desire to attain that. and that is called as mumukshutvam. Mumukshutvam is the desire for moksha. That was the third qualification. Fourth one is Shatka Sampatti. Shatka Sampatti is sixfold discipline, and we were seeing the sixfold disciplines in the last class. We started with Shamaha. Shamaha meaning tranquility of the mind control. The mind by nature is constantly involved in worldly activities. It is always extrovert in nature. And this mind has to be brought into control. Even when we are sitting in this class, our mind keeps wandering and we don't even recognize that. The mind keeps wandering on its own. A sadhaka, a mumukshu, a jignasu, for him to have the necessary, for him to be able to actually understand the shastras better, he needs to get the mind in control, and that is called as shamaha. For us to keep mind in control, we'll have to understand the workings of the mind. How does the mind work? Why does it? When does it go? Why is it not in our control? The mind gets frequently disturbed. Disturbance in the mind is called as vikshepa. We use this term called vikshepa. Vikshepa means disturbance in mind. And this vikshepa can happen in two ways. One is due to the sense organs. Is sadhaka equal to jignasu is equal to mumukshu? I'll answer that. Sadhaka is a sadhaka is a person who has got some spiritual, who is in the spiritual path. So everybody who is in spiritual path is a sadhaka. Now, within the spiritual path, if a person wants to pursue moksha, has his only goal, and his top goal is moksha, then that sadhaka becomes a mumukshu. Otherwise, a sadhaka, any person might say, I am in a spiritual path, but may not be aware that they need to pursue for moksha. And therefore, only some sadhakas are mumukshu. Because these sadhakas have already made up the mind that they want moksha as their final goal. So a sadhaka can become a mumukshu only if he has moksha as his goal. Now, once we come to moksha, different people have different opinion or different understanding of moksha. Some people think moksha is attaining Paramapadam. Moksha is reaching the feet of Lord in Vaikunta, or moksha is Shivapadam, going to Kailasa, or moksha is to be in Samadhi state, or moksha is bringing the Kundalini Shakti in top of it. So different people have different understanding of what is moksha. A person who comes to Advaita Vedanta would be able to then realize that moksha is possible only through jnana, knowledge of the self. Only knowledge of self can give you moksha. So what he does is he wants to get that knowledge. So he becomes a seeker of that knowledge. And seeker of knowledge is known as jignasu. Jignasu is seeker of knowledge. So a jignasu is definitely a mumukshu, and a mumukshu is definitely a sadhaka. But not all sadhakas are mumukshus, and not all mumukshus are jignasus. I hope I made it clear there. Okay. So now coming back to this. Shamaha. The mind can get disturbed in two ways. One is due to the sense organs. See, we might be reading something, or we might be even in this class, and then we hear a sound somewhere, our mind gets distracted. Or when we see somebody passing by doing something, our mind gets distracted. Or some smell comes from the kitchen, our mind can get distracted. So the mind can get disturbed because of these indriyas, these sense organs. So we have to understand that to get the mind in control, we have to first understand the mind can get disturbed from where or through what. And the mind can get disturbed through the sense organs. That is number one. The second is, the mind can also get disturbed or distracted because of memories that we have collected in our mind. This can be known when you actually sit for dhyana, when you sit for meditation and you close your eyes and you try to focus on one particular Ishta Devata. You will see that the mind will bring back so many things from the past memory. Oh, yesterday he did that. I should not have done that. Oh, this person is always like that. Maybe I should actually have told him then and there. I mean, a lot of those memories would keep flooding us. And we do not have any control on that. The mind does on its own. The mind on its own picks up these memories from the past and then brings it to our surface, and then we get disturbed. We get perturbed. This activity where the mind gets disturbed because of this is known as sanchalam. In Sanskritam we say sanchalam. And remember, the mind, in this case, we are not physically in contact with any of the person or those situation currently. Though it is not happening right now. It has happened sometime in the past, and yet my mind is able to bring it back to my memory, from memory, and is able to disturb me. This picking up things from the past and causing disturbance, that disturbance is called as vikshepa. And what happens? The more I am able to store things in my memory about my past hurt feelings, whoever has hurt me, wherever I feel guilty about things, the more I store in my mind, the more I store things about all these negative things, all the issues that I have faced in my life with people, situation and others, the more it is going to come back and disturb me. There is a lesson from there, you can take it. So this is another way or another reason why my mind can get disturbed. And that's why we say, it is easy to memorize for a child rather than when you become an adult. Because as a child, the memory that you have is very limited. You wouldn't have, as we grow older, the memory load keeps increasing, and therefore it becomes so difficult that there is no storage space to actually even memorize and keep things. And even without effort, our mind keeps going to a certain situation in the past, to a certain person in our life. When we sit, it goes automatically to a situation, to a person. The mind, without our control, does it. Bringing that mind back to our control is known as shamaha. Shamaha is about restraining the mind, disciplining the mind, controlling the mind. Shamaha is the process in which, in a book titled Vichara Sagaram, Nischala Dasa Muni actually wrote, Shamaha is the process in which I do not allow the mind to be disturbed by vasanas. See, there are two things I told. One is sense organs, the second one is the mind itself. From the memory, it picks up things and disturbs my mind. The memory that I have in my mind is only pertaining to what I have identified or collected during this life. And then there are vasanas in my memory, in my chitta. The vasanas are the residue that we collect whenever we do an action. The vasanas can be good vasanas or could be bad vasanas. Whatever action I do, it doesn't stop there. The mind is able to collect a residue from that, and it actually stores. And the next time my mind keeps longing for it, or it starts disliking it. So this is known as vasanas, the collection of these residue from actions. And shamaha is a process in which I do not allow the mind to get disturbed by these vasanas. So shamaha is about calming the mind, not getting it distracted, not getting it agitated. That is another reason why my mind can get agitated at times. When does a mind get agitated? Only when I do not have good values, when I have all the bad values in my mind get agitated. My mind can get agitated because of lobham. Lobham is greed. My mind can get agitated out of dvesham, hatred, krodham, anger. I am angry with a person, I have hatred on that person. Even when the person is not around, my mind can get agitated. Even when the person is many miles away, even when the situation has happened many years ago, that can actually disturb my mind. Desire, kamam. I think of that particular object or that particular person. I keep bringing back. The mind keeps bringing back. I don't need to. The mind will keep bringing back the memories of that person or that person to my mind, that object to my mind. It disturbs my mind. So how do I reduce agitation? I have to drop these thoughts. I have to drop these bad values. I have to drop all this kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya, bhava. How do I do it? We have already discussed in Bhagavad Gita. We have seen that in chapter 13. So there are various, for each of these values we have gone through in detail to see how we can actually improve them. Another way to improve the mind control, better get our mind control, is through dhyana, through meditation. And to start with, you can go back to the Upasana classes, Upasana Yoga, to see how we can do meditation. And the primary and the most important way to bring the mind in control is through japa. Constant, repetitive chanting of a mantra. That will bring back, that will give enormous, that will be the best way to control the mind. We saw that in the topic under meditation, so we can see that. So to summarize, what is shamaha? Shamaha is about not letting the mind take things from the past. Is about making sure that the mind do not bring any new thoughts that can agitate my mind. Shamaha is about reducing all the bad gunas, kama, krodha and other gunas. And finally, samaha is about ability to do dhyana, meditation, focus on a particular object or a particular Ishtadevata. Remember, it is not about removing thoughts. We do not say shamaha means, mind control means I should be in a thoughtless state. I should not get any thoughts. We do not talk about that. Thoughts will be there. Vrittis will keep happening. When we talk about shamaha, There is always a state within yoga asana, there is a samadhi state where there will be no thoughts. But in this stage where we are talking about samaha, it is not about removing thoughts. Thoughts can be there. Only thing is that the thoughts that can agitate my mind, that can disturb my mind, should not be there. So that is called as shamaha. The next one is damaha. Damaha meaning sense control, mastery over the sense organs, or we can say sensory discipline. And you notice that samaha and damaha go together, because we already saw that the mind can get disturbed if the sense is not under control. And to bring the sense organs to control, it is known as damaha. And what are the sense organs we are talking about? We have these 5 jnanendriyas, or the 5 sense organs, and then the 5 karmendriyas. What we'll talk about these karmendriyas and jnanendriyas in little bit detail in a few classes from now. But you can say that jnanendriyas are the organs of knowledge. Karmendriyas are organs of action. Organs of knowledge, jnanendriyas, are the through which we actually collect the knowledge about the world, about things around me. And how do we collect knowledge about this world? We have the eyes through which we see the world, we understand. We have the ears, we have the nose, we have the tongue, and we have the skin. So these 5 sense organs are known as jnanendriyas, or organs of knowledge. And this is how we are collecting the information about this world. So which means everything that I collect from this world has to be processed by something. So these are my input-output devices in technical computer terms. These are my input devices. So I take data through these organs. But then the processing happens through the mind. So the mind is the one which processes them. So obviously, whatever I feed through these organs is going to impact my mind. Just as my stomach has to be fed with right food for it to function properly, similarly for my mind to be fed properly, mind to be working properly, I will have to ensure that I feed the right things through these 5 sense organs. Karmendriyas are basically organs of action. We'll see this, hands, legs, and others. We'll see that. But primarily the source of knowledge for my mind is through the jnanendriyas. So shamaha and damaha go together. So if I have to equate shamaha, if I consider that to be like a healthy mind, shamaha is about having a healthy mind, then damaha is about the diet control. It is about ensuring that my mind gets the right inputs. So if my mind has to be healthy, what we feed into the mind has to be healthy. Or making sure I am restrained, I have enough restraint, I show enough restraint, and I have a discipline in terms of what my mind can get through these sense organs. So what is the diet that control that we are talking about? Ensuring that only the right inputs are given to the mind. In other words, not seeing, not eating, not hearing, not smelling, not touching anything that will cause agitations in my mind. So I have to be careful, and I have to ensure that I discipline my sense organs so that I am able to keep my both my sense organs in control as well as my mind in control. So that is Damaha. The next one is Uparamaha. Uparamaha, or in some places we call it as Uparamati. Uparamati can be called as either reduction of extrovert activities, or we can say introspectiveness, to look inward. The right word that is typically used in all the books is withdrawal. They say withdrawal. Uparamati means withdrawal. Withdrawal from where? Withdrawal from extrovert activities. So that's why I say reduction of extrovert activities. So when you actually reduce your extrovert activities, you will be able to automatically come for introspection. You will have more time to do introspection. And the less you actually get involved with all these extrovert activities, the less you will feel agitated. And therefore you will be in a relaxed mode. You will be able to be in a little bit stress-free environment. And that is very important for self-inquiry. So to continuously maintain the mind. So I have been, suppose if I am being able to control my mind through Samaha, I am able to control my mind through Damaha. So the mind and sense organs have been quietened and disciplined by Samaha and Damaha. To maintain that same level of discipline, to maintain the same amount of control, I should be following Uparamaha. So to ensure that the mind is still under control and doesn't get again out of control, I will have to do Uparamaha or Uparamati. So if question might come, so if I am going to practice Samaha and Damaha continuously, then it becomes Uparamaha, right? Why then it's supposed to be why then it is actually classified as a separate sadhana? Why then bring this separately? Because we know Samaha and Damaha already. To keep the mind in control, to keep the sense organs in control. As long as I am able to maintain that, why do I need to bring another one? So we have to understand that this is different. Suppose if I say you have to wake up at 4 a.m. tomorrow, it is easy. Because, or not easy, if people who are actually used to waking up late, and if they have to wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning, it will be an effort. But it doesn't matter. They will still be able to put an effort, keep alarm, make sure that they will be able to catch up on the next day's sleep, whatever, and they wake up, say on the day of Diwali or whatever. But suppose if I say you have to wake up at 4 a.m. on all days starting from tomorrow, then will it be easy? It won't be. To go for a morning jog one day is easy, but to do that 7 days a week throughout the year will be difficult. It takes more effort. To have something in control for one day, once it is easy. To have that control on diet continuously is difficult. So and that's why it is seen as a separate sadhana. Uparamaha is about staying in Samaha and Damaha. Just like Samaha and Damaha is about keeping the mind controlled continuously. It's not easy. For example, if you on a hot day, on a tar road, black tar road, if somebody has to walk barefooted, what do we do when you have to walk barefooted on a hot day and on a desert sand or whatever? We try to quickly run. We ensure that we do not stay in one place at the same time. But suppose if I say you have to stay in one place at the same time for some time, then it becomes difficult. So similarly, Shamaha and Damaha can be started. We can start them, we can practice for a few days, but to sustain that, that's going to be difficult. And that's why to sustain that only, we say Uparamaha. For example, we will decide that I will not be watching these kind of television programs, these kind of serials, these kind of movies. I'll not read these kind of magazines. I'll not eat these kind of food. I will not indulge in gossip. I will try to avoid all those areas and places where they are gossiping. I will not indulge in any gossip. So to keep that, to sustain that, because after some days, our vasanas will push us to them as a habit, as something that we have been, as something that has come into our swabhava. Our vasanas will push us to it. So to sustain that, to keep that in, to keep following the sadhanas, we have to do it. We will have to withdraw ourselves. For a longer period of time, we'll have to withdraw ourselves from these activities, these things. It's physical withdrawal as well as mental withdrawal. And that is called as Uparamaha or Uparamati. So thus, Shamaha, Damaha, Uparamaha, three sadhanas that help in controlling and maintaining the health of our mind only. All three are mind related. Although it's sense control is needed because ultimately it goes into our mind. So Shamaha, Damaha, Uparamaha, three sadhanas that are related to the mind control. So if Shamaha can be called as being healthy, Damaha we already saw that as diet control to ensure that the right food goes in. Then Uparamaha can be saying as staying fit, staying healthy. So if a doctor says, you'll have to stay healthy, go for a jog. It doesn't mean that you'll have to go only for one day. You'll have to go regularly for a jog. So this regular, continuous practice sadhana is called as Uparamaha. So Shamaha, Damaha, Uparamaha. Then the fourth one is Titiksha. Titiksha means forbearance, endurance. The mental toughness to withstand all forms of challenges in life. Life for every human being, forget human being, for every jiva in this world is a challenge. There is not a single person in this world who is without a challenge. And to face all types of experiences in life, we need some bit of endurance power. We need to have some bit of forbearance. We need to have some bit of psychological immunity built in with the various ups and downs that life can offer. That inner strength is called as Titiksha. And what is the biggest ups and downs that we get? When you say up, it's down, right? So in life, everything comes in as a pair of opposites. There are always dualities. The life is full of dualities. Up, down, hot, cold, joy, sorrow, praise, humiliation, praise, insult, whatever. So to be able to maintain that inner strength, to ensure that I do not get affected by neither the up nor the down, is called as Titiksha. Titiksha is about endurance, I said, forbearance. It's not just the dualities, right? We start, say, a sadhana. We start a sadhana, or we decide to say, okay, I'm going to take Ekadashi Vrata. So I decide to take Ekadashi Vrata. Question is, I'm able to do it for one Ekadashi. Am I able to do that consistently for all Ekadashis? Then what happens? The moment I see an obstacle coming in my way, the moment we get a small obstacle, we stop the Vrata. Same thing with regards to reading Shastras or coming to class or listening to Vedanta also. Are we consistent? Are we in a position to put this as priority? Are we actually looking for an excuse, easy excuse to go out? Those are the places where Titiksha comes into play. How much of Titiksha you have? Are you willing to overcome the obstacle or not? And with regards to this spiritual pursuit, in every pursuit you have obstacles, and in spiritual pursuit more so than any. So Titiksha becomes very important. Even for doing Shamaha or Damaha, for example, we will need Titiksha. We have to sit in a place, our legs can get numb, my nose can start twitching, I will start thinking about what I ate yesterday, I will start thinking about what I have to do tomorrow. So the mind starts wavering. Then we say, okay, this meditation is not for me. We lose patience. We say, okay, maybe it is not for me. Or maybe you will start saying that maybe today is not a good day, tomorrow I will come and do. But then tomorrow it does. 3 days later we'll say, we decide that dhyana is not meant for us. So that patience is very important. So two meanings of Titiksha. One is endurance, the other one is patience. Patience is an important virtue as well. Nothing comes overnight. Nothing comes. Moksha is not so easy that we actually attend this 30 sessions and then at the end of the day we get a certificate that, okay, hereby certify that you are qualified or you have got moksha. It doesn't happen that way. So patience is very important. How do we get patience? Again, in Bhagavad Gita classes we've seen a lot on this. You can check out there. But quickly here, we have to understand that we have taken human being or a form of human being. We are jivas, we have taken a human body. And to get a human body, we have got a mixture of papa and punya. We got a mixture of papa and punya, and papa is going to give us definitely sorrowful situations. Punya is going to definitely give us joyful situations. The outcome of papa is sorrow, the outcome of punya is joy. There is no doubt about that. And therefore, as a human being, because you are born as a human being, it is already given that you are going to have a mixture of joy and sorrow. So obviously I will go through some painful situations. I will go through some sorrowful situations. We have to accept that. We have to understand that. Forget, any even avatara who gets a human form will have to go through that. Rama had to go through pain, sorrow, suffering. Krishna had to go through pain, sorrow, suffering. Even avatars, they are not left out. So we just have to understand, we will have to go through and we'll have to endure them. We have to understand. Similarly, in life, we will meet people around us whose behavior we will not like. And that could be even within our homes, neighbors, office, colleagues, whatever. We will have to endure them. We will have to patiently endure them. There's no point in getting agitated. Because ultimately we have to understand is, I am not here to change anybody. I am here to change only myself. To be honest, it is even difficult for me to change myself. Then how about what to say about changing others? I myself, I am not able to change even myself. Then how can I say that I want to change others? It's not possible. We have to understand that. And the more understanding we get, the more patient we become. It is not that we are allowing that person or that allowing that particular thing to happen. We may try to avoid that person. We may want to get away from that company. All those things are there, but I don't want my mind to be agitated. So patience is an important virtue. And again, taking an analogy here, a healthy body, we talked about a healthy body, stomach, diet, control, and all those things, we saw that, staying healthy and others. So just like a healthy body needs stamina to fight the bacteria and virus. So there will be always this bacteria and virus in the environment. And my body has to be fit enough to fight those bacteria and virus. Similarly, the mind needs strength as well to fight all these negative things around me, the painful situations, the sorrowful situations, the unreasonable people, all those things. So that strength is got by titiksha. Remember, we may even be able to control our mind. Samaha, we have done samaha, we have been able to control our mind. But that doesn't mean that we are not going to face any difficulties afterwards. Difficulties could be there, will be there because of our prarabdha. We just need to be calm. We need to be patient. And that titiksha is a sadhana. So the mind becomes healthy and calm through shamaha, damaha and uparamaha. We have seen that. And now with titiksha, the mind becomes strong as well. So that is how we can relate these four values. All four, again we can say, the uparamaha, the titiksha is not only for the mind, but also for the physical body. We'll have to practice ourselves sitting cross-legged, sitting in the floor. We'll have to ensure that our body is not used, or we do not let the body seek comfort at all times. Because both the body and mind, they are easily try to actually look for opportunities to get into the comfort zone. And if there is no comfort available, or if we are out of the comfort zone, the mind starts getting agitated. The body gets problems, and through the body the mind also starts getting problems. Sometimes when there is no power, you are in a village or somewhere and there is no power, and then it's a hot day, you are sweating. Some people get agitated about that. Some people will start shouting, will have issues, will get angry. And that's because the physical discomfort is actually impacting the mind. So we'll have to understand that. We'll have to build titiksha, both for the body as well as the mind. So these are the four. Now Shraddha. Shraddha is trust. Before that, I'll just take this question. Is it okay to avoid people with whom I feel miserable even if they are very closely related to you? Is it okay to shout and get angry to put your point across if you have not been heard when you say it politely? I think it's going to take a longer time to answer these. As I said, we have discussed this in detail in our Bhagavad Gita classes on anger and these things. But quick answer, is it okay to avoid people? If there are people who can be avoided, very well we can. But if they are part of the family, then we may not be. So in these times, we'll have to just go with titiksha, and we have to accept that it is our prarabdha. It is my karma that has resulted me in this situation. Wherever we can change, we should try changing it, as in changing the situation, not the people. But of course, people also, we have some bit of, we can try to change some people around us who are close to us, like our kids and some close people, but there is also a limitation there. Everybody comes with their own swabhava, their own vasanas. But if you are able to avoid people, yes, you can very well avoid. Is it okay to shout and get angry to put your point across? Anger is never justified. It is you can always, and shouting is also not going to help. But the thing is, when we discussed anger, we discussed this. Basically, what happens is, you will have to ensure that the message is conveyed across the first time. And for that, typically what happens is we allow the other person to not understand, not make the communication clear. And when I say communication clear is, I'll give you an example. When we are dealing with kids, for example, we say, do not play games, go and study. Or we say, do Sandhya Vandana and then come to eat. Because the boy or the kid doesn't obey, and then they continue to do. So on some days we allow that person to do. And then on some days, when somebody is around in the house, we get angry because we want to show them that this boy is a disciplined boy, this kid is a disciplined boy. So we get angry on those days. So we are not actually consistent in our behavior. If we are consistent in our behavior, we may not need to shout or get angry. So that is one way. There are multiple things we can discuss about. As I said, it requires a longer discussion. We can take it maybe in Bhagavad Gita classes when we start one again, or if you want to join the existing class, then we will probably see them in one of those classes there. But is it okay to shout and get angry? No. That's the answer. Now, Shraddha. Shraddha is, as I said, implicit faith or implicit trust. Faith or trust, we can say. Trust in, here Shraddha or trust or faith in what? Trust in our scriptures. Trust in the Guru. Trust with the Acharya. Trust with what the scriptures has to say. And why do we need this trust to start with? Especially when the Guru says, and why do we need trust in what the Guru has to say? Suppose the Guru says, you are hungry, okay, go and eat, your hunger will vanish. In that case, I don't need a trust in what Guru has to say, because I know it by experience that if I eat, my hunger will vanish. So there is no need of any trust in Guru. But when Guru says, you are Ananda Swarupa, you are the bliss personified, you are the bliss, there is no personification, you are the bliss. And then I will say, Guru, you don't know my problems. You come to my house one day, I will show you what the problems are, and then you can tell me whether I am actually Ananda Swarupa. And then you will not even say all these things. So, right now you are not in a position to experience what the Guru says. So that is when I need Shraddha. Because when what Guru says, or what a sentence, that particular sentence that Guru says is in conflict with my means of knowledge, with my pramana, there is a conflict there, I need Shraddha. Now I know that I am not yet able to have that knowledge, I don't have that experience, and until that I have that knowledge or that experience, I will have to have faith or trust in what the Guru has to say. And again, when we say faith, it is not blind faith. It is just what we call here Shraddha is an open-mindedness. That until I understand things clearly, I will keep my mind open. I will not be critical, because some people have this, come with an audit mentality. Audit mentality meaning finding fault. Where can I find fault? Or with an element of always I will want to doubt whatever he says, whatever the Shastra says. That is not open-mindedness. Open-mindedness is I am willing to unlearn what I have learned, provided this actually is I am able to relate to it what I see, what I hear. I am not critical about what it says. I am willing to give the benefit of doubt to the scriptures until I understand. That is known as Shraddha. If I don't have Shraddha, what happens is I will give importance to my experience. And I will negate whatever the Guru has to offer to say to me. And remember, my experience is not always true. As I said, the most common example is we experience that the sun rising in the east, setting in the west. That is what my experience is. So, but my science book says, oh, it's only the earth which is rotating. The sun is actually, it doesn't move. I have a Shraddha on my science book. I am willing to accept what my science book says, although it is in conflict with my experience. But then I do my vichara, I do my analysis, and I am able to do, understand and accept that. So even though it is against my pramana. In the same way, the Shastras say certain things, and we will have to keep an open mind about it, slowly get our doubts clarified, and until we are able to make it our knowledge. And that has to come, Shraddha has to come through humility. So which means, what happens is, normally if we have intellectual arrogance, we will not have Shraddha. We will think that my intellect is better than what the Shastras are saying or the Guru is saying. So that becomes, the intellectual arrogance becomes a very big obstacle for spiritual studies. And without this Shraddha, without this faith, Vedanta Shravanam cannot take place. And Bhagavan says, Shraddhavan labate jnanam. He says this in the 6th chapter. He says, Shraddha alone gives jnanam. Although it is not Shraddha alone, but to highlight the importance of Shraddha, Bhagavan says, Shraddhavan labate jnanam. It means without Shraddha, jnanam is impossible. So how can we get Shraddha then on Shastras? We have to keep reminding ourselves that the Ishwaratvam of our scriptures, that the Vedas are apaurusheyam, that the Vedas have come from Ishvara. So Vedas cannot be negated. Vedas are, that's why in Tamil also we say, I don't know in how many, in other languages they say, Ni sonna enna Veda vaka. Whatever you say, does it become Vedas? Is it as good as Vedas? In other words, it means that what is said in Vedas are true. You have to take it implicitly granted that it is true. That Shraddha will have to come. That is only Only when we believe that the Vedas are apaurusheyam, our gurus are not, they have been very intelligent, they have been able to get this knowledge, only then our Shraddha will come. The last one is Samadhanam in the Shatka Sampatti. So we saw Samaha, Damaha, Uparamaha, Titiksha, Shraddha, now Samadhanam. Samadhanam is concentration, focusing capacity. The capacity to focus on a goal that I have taken. So right now, if I am in a class, I am listening to this talk and my mind is focused on it at least for an hour. So concentration, that focusing is what is known as Samadhanam. Remember, all these qualities are important from a spiritual pursuit standpoint. It is probably needed even for a materialistic pursuit, but for spiritual pursuit it is even more necessary. So through Samaha, Damaha and Uparamaha, we have brought the mind to our control. The mind which was wavering, which was extroverted in nature, we are able to stop it, control it, calm it through Samaha and Damaha, then retain it through Uparamaha, strengthen it through Titiksha, and now we have qualified the mind to get Shraddha, to get this Jnana, qualified the mind, as in let the mind agree that scriptures will have to be fully trusted. And once we got this mind qualified, now we are able to focus through Samadhanam, concentrate. And once we have this concentrated mind, we can be able to assimilate the knowledge that is given through Jnana Yoga, through Shravanam. We listen to the scriptures, Shravanam, we hear them. That focused mind, we are able to get, once we are able to get that, we are able to contemplate. First we are able to understand, we are able to accept it, then contemplate it, and then assimilate it through Nitidhyasana. So these are the sixfold discipline called as Shatka Sampatti. Samaha, Damaha, Uparamaha, Titiksha, Shraddha, Titiksha, Samadhana. Now we will left with only one more one, Mumukshutvam, which we will see in the next class. Any questions on this so far? I have made lots of mistakes because I have not had I have made lot of mistakes in my life because I have not had very critical behavior and trusted people in my daily life. So is it my fault? Seems very generic question here. I will not be able to, I am not here to judge whether it is your fault or anybody else's fault. I can only say, well, if you know that you have made a mistake, try to correct it. Trusting people, we may have to trust people. There is no other choice. Every day we are trusting so many people. Question is, once we have understood that the person cannot be trusted, then we shouldn't be trusting the person again. So we learn from our mistakes. So that's all I can say. But this seems to be very subjective, and I am not in a position to judge or answer here. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, then we will meet again in the next class. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Swasti Prajabhya Paripalayantam Nyayena Margena Mahimmayishaha. Go Brahmanebhyo Shubhamastu Nityam Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah.